With us we have Gautham, who is an investor, ecosystem enabler, and one of the directors of Headstart.
No, I'm a volunteer with Headstart. I wear two hats in the ecosystem. I work with Blume Ventures and I volunteer with Headstart. It's been a decade of volunteering with Headstart for the ecosystem.
Give us a perspective of how this event has come to be.
See, Bangalore Slush. Let me start with the emotion today. I think we're so happy with how this turned out to be. It's so nice speaking to every founder, every investor, every volunteer on how the day was. I think let me take you a little into the backstory of how this came to be, right? So the tryst for Headstart with Finland and the Finnish startup ecosystem takes us to the COVID times about 4 years back, when the Finnish government invited a delegation of ecosystem enablers from India, which had Headstart, the likes of Your Story, and a couple of others, to be a part of the delegation, be in Finland, understand the ecosystem, and come out with suggestions on how can we bridge India and Finland ecosystems better. So it started off there, and that eventually led to Headstart's involvement in suggestions on the policy making side. We had an initiative called India-Finland Startup Hub, which is officially an initiative between the two governments, India and Finland, to bridge the startup ecosystems on both sides, startup and venture. So Headstart was involved in implementing that, engaging with both the ecosystems, and running a lot of initiatives on both sides, right? So taking Indian companies to Finland, Finnish companies to India, acceleration, mentorship, a lot of networking. So the last couple of years, a lot of learning for the Headstart team on the Finnish ecosystem, a lot of contribution towards Indian startups expanding there. All credits to the Headstart team volunteers. Arzu played a big role in the entire India-Finland Startup Hub, taking it from zero to a very engaging global bridge today. So I think that led to us also being a part of Slush in 2022. So the Headstart team was in Helsinki. I was also there. It was a great experience being at Helsinki, experiencing the OG Slush. I think it was a massive summit, right? 10,000 people in one place, dark mode, and a complete party vibe, right? So tech no in bracket, right? So we say a complete techno vibe for the startup ecosystem. I think it was a very aspirational format for us to bring it to India, especially Bangalore. And we always believed that the city closest to Helsinki to host a format like this, a party vibe for the startup ecosystem, was Bangalore. And I think that's where we reached out to the Slush team. We applied for the license to host it in Bangalore, and Headstart was given the license to bring Slush to Bangalore and host it here. So what happens today is all the effort of the last couple of years of convincing Slush that Bangalore is ready and Headstart could bring the ecosystem together to host Bangalore Slush. So really happy with how this all turned out.
You have been working for this from several years, right from getting the license to many months of promoting the event. Even I was there in one of the promotions in KPMG. So what was the drive? What were your expectations from today's event? And how did it turn out? So what were the objectives of today's event? Hold on. What were the objectives of today's Bangalore Slush event?
Let me take a step back here, right? So when we started planning this 6 months back, the intent was, how do you create an event in a format and an experience that probably hasn't been there before for the startups and the ecosystem in general? But at the same time, how do you retain the Bangalore ecosystem flavor while bringing the Helsinki ecosystem flavor, the Slush DNA, right? And trust me, the Slush DNA is an ecosystem party. Slush is an ecosystem party. It's an amazing experience for those who've not been to Helsinki for Slush. And which better city than Bangalore to actually bring that party feeling into an ecosystem event. So that led to it. At the same time, it was about how do you cater to startups that are coming from non-metros, cities beyond Bangalore, give them an experience that they would never have. It was also about access, right? Access to some of the best founders building in the deep tech space. some of the best investors in the space. How do you allow them to learn from them, hear them out in one place, in a very informal setup where you're not under stress? And most importantly, it was about how do you get access to all of these folks without the worry of how do I even get an intro to this particular founder or an investor. So all the who's who were in one place, and the focus was on deep tech. The idea was to touch a sector that generally has a little lesser love from the VCs. But the idea was to have a lot of deep tech founders in one place. So 80% of today's crowd had deep tech founders from 26 different cities. I think Bharat Pitchathon, the flagship initiative of Headstart, that takes investors from Bombay, Bangalore, and Delhi to 25 different cities, identify the best startups from these cities, and bring them down to Bangalore, which happened at Slush. So we saw the top 50 startups, and from that top 15 exciting startups pitched to about 25 investors today. I think phenomenal opportunity for a lot of the early stage startup seed, pre-seed startups. So very excited that access was bridged, and the exposure that a lot of these founders never had was addressed here.
What were your personal highlights from today?
The way the volunteers, stepped up and handled something like this, right? So Headstart's been doing this for 17 years. It's a volunteer-driven org that's done more than 3,000 events for the startup ecosystem. But a format like this, an event like this was very new. And I think the way the volunteers stepped up, visualized something totally new, and pulled off, with so much ease, right? We need to remember that all these are volunteers who are founders or who are operators working in startups or enablers working in different ecosystem roles. They have a day job and they've been keeping aside a few hours every week. And all of that shaping into something that we saw today, I think, is phenomenal. So, all credits to the volunteers. And the reason I'm mentioning that is, there was hardly any effort from me in the entire slush this time, right? All that I had to do was be in the war room, be there as a mentor to the team, and just ensure that they're doing everything that they had to. I think the team pulled off something phenomenal.
Can you share a fun story from so many events that you have organized? Any startup ecosystem related or anything that comes from top of your head?
I think stories plenty. I've been obsessed on building communities. It starts, being the reason for who I am today and my understanding of the ecosystem. Been a decade of volunteering, and I think something that I've been loving here is the ability to travel to different cities, different ecosystems. Spend time with founders from so many different cities, and learn about what's happening in a city like a Bangalore, a Chennai, a Dhanbad, a Calcutta, Sikkim, a Dehradun, an Ahmedabad, and also feel welcome because you've got volunteers in all these cities. You've got founders in these cities who are happiest to host you, and I think there's so much that I've learned on just what's so different about each ecosystem, right? I think and every trip to these smaller towns, I think, has been a learning. At the same time, very interesting stuff on how they see business, how they see startups, if that's a word that you say. And most importantly, I think the Bangalore has been an aspiration for a lot of these founders outside, right? And the way each founder from a different city looks at someone coming from a Bangalore has been an eye-opener for me, right? So some of the smaller cities do have an aspirational feeling of, someone coming from Bangalore will actually take me to the next stage. It could be a founder, it could be an enabler. I think a lot of learnings there and a lot of fun interactions with founders there.
I'm coming from a smaller city also, and I totally agree with what you're saying. And you're taking the system out of Bangalore to the smaller places is phenomenal. I mean, that's what will take Bharat ahead.
And I think India, if this is something that we've also published as a part of the Blume Indus Valley report, right? We're talking about how India is not just India 1 or India 1A, which is your metro. India is actually the India 2, India 3, the Bharat, which makes up a large part of the real India. There's so much that startups are doing for them.
You know what else it does? It will reduce the traffic problem in Bangalore. So they are they don't need to come to the city.
How I wish. You know what? It actually took me 2 hours to come from home to this venue, but I think it is worth all the traffic for what we had today. Two very interesting startups that we met uh, came from very small cities. So we had them as a part of the founder stories on the main stage. So there was a startup called Bonvi, which is building drones from Bhubaneswar, right? And the kind of quality drones being deployed to defense, and the startup called Sunfox, a 120 member team building a deep tech product out of Dehradun, saving thousands and thousands of lives. Phenomenal to see what they're doing and hear what they're doing. I think this is what events like these bring out, right? Stories that you normally don't hear sitting in Bangalore, sitting in Delhi, and an opportunity or a platform for a lot of these founders to come and tell us why investors should actually look at them and eventually back them.
Can you share a story where a startup or an investor has come back and said like, "Thanks a lot. I had this because of this," and feedback like that?
So, to be honest, Headstart thrives on these stories, right? Because as volunteers, the 100 plus volunteers that are there across the 20 different chapters, there's no financial incentive for any of them to spend the time that they spend, right? So the single biggest measurement for them is testimonials and updates from founders or investors or anyone they add value to. So Headstart does a lot of work on also working with incubators and turning around incubators, contributing to enabling them better, apart from founders and investors. So there's constant touch with founders, investors, and there have been a lot of stories in the last decade.
Can you think of a story on top of your head, a recent one or any that you remember, and it touched your soul?
So I think multiple. I would probably pick a couple of them. The very similar example of a startup from a smaller town that met one of the investors at Bharat Pichathon and eventually ended up raising their first seed round a couple of months from there. That was the first point of joy for all the Headstart volunteers, that you were able to bring founder together and the investors together. I think the real meat here was when some things didn't go too well. The founders actually came back to the Headstart volunteers or the team that enabled this first on how to bail them out of this relationship or this transaction, right? And the team chipping in, helping that founder out, guiding them on how to really save himself on this transaction or how to deal with it. I think that was a classic example of how founders look at the support from Headstart, its mentors, its volunteers, as a buddy to the entire startup and its journey. A lot of times volunteers play the role of an extended team member or an invisible team member to a lot of these startups, right? Because you're literally hearing the founder's journey, the founder's trauma, a lot of the happy news. You're also constantly looking at whom to connect, how do you make them win. So I think somehow every volunteer's DNA has been, in terms of making the founder win. So
it's a community. It doesn't just end at events. So you take care and you curate and be an enabler in the true sense.
I think there's a firm belief that community is very important, and events are a medium, right? So events bring people together. It's a channel, networking happens there, but there's a lot of things that go down the funnel in terms of actual support. So, events is where.
Great event today. What next for Bangalore Slush and Headstart?
I think this is just a beginning. It was a format that we wanted to try and see if this would be fun, this would be accepted. I think it's been a resounding success. Everyone's so excited about the format. So definitely, Bangalore Slush 2025 is what we would all love to plan. And let's see if that comes true. I think a lot to go, but that's something we would love to really plan. Of course, Headstart would continue doing all that it's doing. We're all here to volunteer and pay it forward. One learning has been, all of us should volunteer once in our life for a cause that we truly believe in. I think the the joy of volunteering and the learning from that is uncomparable, right? So, uh, volunteer with any org that you know. At the same time, with Headstart, a lot of programs being planned at city levels. So different chapters have their own focus. Each ecosystem has different problems to solve for, and of course, Bangalore will start working on Bangalore Slush 2025.
Yeah, let's go. Thank you.